Hello there, Year 10. It's Mrs. Murray again. Um, going to do a walkthrough for you for paper one, obviously, because that's the paper that you've got coming up. But this time for the Christmas Carol question. So I'm hoping that you've watched the Macbeth one, and I'll be doing a couple more of those for you to hopefully give you a bit of help in how to tackle the question. And this time it's a Christmas Carol one that I'm going to look at with you. I've tried to choose kind of themes that, possibly maybe, who knows, we're not in the game of prediction, are we? But something that I feel that you should definitely kind of like revise in preparation for the upcoming exam. So, um, usual, just a reminder, it's a 1 hour and 45-minute exam. Paper one, nice, simple, straightforward. You've got a Macbeth question, no choice. You just do the question, and you've got a Christmas Carol question, no choice again. However, what you have got is your extract, okay, to help you. You simply split your time evenly because they're both worth exactly the same number of marks between the two questions. So half your time on Macbeth, half your time on A Christmas Carol. Right, let's have a look at what we've got here. Okay, remember what I've said. The first thing to do is to read the question, okay? Read the question before you even read the extract, all right? Because then then when you read the extract, what it is that you're looking for. So this question here is, starting with this extract, how does Dickens present ideas about the power of family connections in A Christmas Carol? And it will be obviously the 2 bullet points in the extract and then the same in the novel as a whole. Okay. Um, Right, remember what I've said, it's not a 50-50 split. It's going to depend entirely on the quality of the extract that you've got in front of you and the type of language that is there. If it's good language, you need to analyse the hell out of it, don't you? Because it's there in front of you. But like I say, it's going to depend, isn't it, what the extract is like. You might write more about the novel as a whole. You might write more about the extract. It doesn't matter as long as you write about both. So the question, the power of family connections. Often they will word it in a different or a strange kind of a way because they don't want the questions to sound all the same. But as you can see, our topic purely and simply is family, okay? And how family is presented in A Christmas Carol by Dickens. And the extract that we've got comes from chapter 3, stave 3. Scrooge is at the Cratchit household with the ghost. So that's the point in the novel in which we're at. Okay, I'm going to quickly read through this extract. It's not the longest one, and we'll talk a little bit about what we've got here. But then what I'm going to focus on is doing a bit of a brainstorm of the different ideas that you could do for the novel as a whole. And I'm going to do a thesis statement with you, okay? Your introductory paragraph, because I think, that's a skill that's definitely worth practicing and definitely worth thinking about, all right? So here's the extract. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. By this time it was getting dark and snowing pretty heavily, and as Scrooge and the spirit went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires in kitchens, parlours, and all sorts of rooms was wonderful. Here the flickering of the blaze showed preparations for a cosy dinner, with hot plates baking through and through before the fire, and deep red curtains ready to be drawn to shut out cold and darkness. There all the children of the house were running out into the snow to meet their married sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts, and be the first to greet them. Here again were shadows on the window blind of guests assembling, and there a group of handsome girls, all hooded and fur booted, and all chattering at once, tipped lightly off to some near neighbour's house, where, woe upon the single man who saw them enter, artful witches, well they knew it, in a glow. But if you were judged from the numbers of people on their way to friendly gatherings, you might have thought that no one was at home to give them welcome when they got there, instead of every house expecting company and piling up its fires half chimney high. Blessings on it! How the ghost exulted, how it bared its breadth of breast and opened its capacious palm and floated on, outpouring with a generous hand its bright and harmless mirth on everything within its reach. Right, so we can see there's quite a lot to sort of pull out there, isn't there, about family. This is the Cratchits that are being described, and obviously they're going to be a big part of this essay because they are an example, aren't they, in the novel of the power of family. Not a handsome family, not well dressed, shoes not waterproof, clothes scanty. So the description there of them, there's nothing remarkable about this family. That they're not particularly good looking, they've got not good clothes, their clothes aren't waterproof. But his point is, what they have got is each other, isn't it? It's family. Peter might have known and very likely did the inside of a pawnbroker's, suggesting that the pawnbrokers is the place where you took anything you've got of value and borrowed against it, and then later on you'd get the money when you were paid and get your item back. Unbelievably, it's something that disappeared entirely from society and has actually come back. And Peter would have been very familiar with the inside of it because this is a family who were living in poverty, but they were happy, grateful and pleased with one another and contented with the time. So we've got the use of listing there, haven't we? Describing, despite the difficulty of their life, actually they're happy and contented, aren't they, with everything that they've got because they've got each other. This is the point, isn't it, of the Cratchits in the novel. They've got 2 points, haven't they? If we've got a question about poverty, obviously the Cratchits are hugely important. This being a question about family, and once again, the Cratchits are hugely important. I don't think Dickens is saying anything that, you know, oh, it's okay to live in poverty as long as you've got family. He's not saying that, but he is showing us the power of family and the importance of family. And obviously they're juxtaposed against Scrooge, who, despite all of his money, has got nobody, hasn't he? We've got then Scrooge had his eye upon them, and especially on Tiny Tim until the last. Remember, Scrooge didn't even know Tiny Tim existed until the ghost kind of like introduced him to him. Scrooge and the Spirits. Now look at the description here. Went along the streets, the brightness of the roaring fires, and the brightness of it, the flickering of the blaze, cosy dinner, hot plates baking through and through before the fire, deep red curtains, ready to be shut out cold and darkness. Now, and when I do the brainstorm with you, I don't know if you remember, but when Fred is first introduced to us, all of the language associated with Fred is of warmth. He's all aglow, isn't he? And notice all of the language here is warmth, it's fire, it's heat, and all of that linked to family. So all of these words that he uses here are warm, they're hot words, aren't they? Just like I said, when Fred was first introduced to us, to kind of like represent the warmth of family. All the children of the house were running out to meet their married sisters, brothers, cousins, uncles, aunts. Look, we've got the listing there of all the different family members once again. Shadows on the window blind of guests. He talks about the girls there. Well, they knew it, all in a glow. Once again, okay, this warm language used to kind of represent the warmth of family and the importance of it. Piling up its fires, half chimney high, warmth once again. And the ghost there who exulted, with a generous hand, its bright and harmless mirth on everything within its reach. Okay, so I've galloped through that very quickly because what I wanted to get onto with you was what I would do after that. So the exam situation, you've read the question. You know that what we're looking at is family. I tend to always write it somewhere near my extract, so I'm reminded of what it is that I'm looking for. And we've had a look at the extracts and done a bit of an annotation on it. Now, the next thing that we need to do, and you must, I don't care what you say about, no, I don't like to plan. If you're going to do a decent response, you're going to have to plan it, guys. There's no doubt about it. I'm sorry about that. So what do we do next? Well, we know that we need to talk about the family in the novel as a whole. So however you do that, it's entirely up to you. I kind of like the power of a good brainstorm, and I'm just going to throw down as many ideas as I can think of to do with family. You might not use all of them, it doesn't matter, but you just want as much as you can probably remember. So I'm going to start right at the beginning in stave 1, and I'm thinking right at the beginning, the first thing we see is Scrooge's isolation, his loneliness, although he doesn't recognize it at the time, and his distance from Fred. And it's one of the first things that we're introduced to, isn't it, in that first stave. And I'm also going to think about what I was just talking about, all of the images used to describe Fred are warmth, aren't they? Okay. And we can contrast that, or we could say that's juxtaposed. Oh, sorry, you can't see that, with the imagery that describes Scrooge at the beginning, which, if you can remember, are all icy, they're cold, because Scrooge hasn't got any family, he's alone, isn't he? So we've got really different images used by Dickens there right at the very beginning, where he kind of like sets this up for us. Our most important family are, in terms of family, are the Cratchits, obviously. They are a massive contrast to Scrooge, obviously. But we could say about them, despite their poverty, they are loving and they're close knit, aren't they? Despite everything, they've got each other. Think about the Christmas morning when they're waiting for Bob to come back from the church with Tiny Tim. Think about them waiting for Martha to come. Think about nobody said it was but a poor turkey. Wasn't it? It was a goose, wasn't it? Sorry. To feed such a large family. They're just grateful for what they've got, aren't they? And for the fact that they've got each other. Think about Mrs. Cratchit, brave in ribbons. She's made her very best to kind of like get dressed up for Christmas Day despite their poverty. All about family, isn't it? Okay. Dickens uses this family. Dickens uses them to show us, I think, strength, family can bring. Okay, that's their purpose, isn't it? So think about the Christmas Day. Oh, and also think about Tiny Tim's death. Now, it doesn't happen, does it? Because Scrooge changes, he's redeemed. But think about how the family come together and they support each other. Horrible writing, sorry. They support each other, they love each other, and then we have the contrast, don't we? Oh, you can't see it again. Sorry. Contrast with Scrooge's death. He's completely alone, isn't he? He's completely alone. He hasn't got any family. He's got no one to protect him when he dies, to the point at which his dead body is actually stolen from. You know, they take away his possessions, actually take away his best sort of like nightgown and the curtains around his bed. That's because there's no one there to protect him, isn't there? So other things about family, right at the very beginning with the Ghost of Christmas Past, and we've got Scrooge's past. We've got little Fan, who he loves very much indeed, but we can see that actually Scrooge has got a rather sort of sad part, hasn't he? And little Fan being the mother of Fred, and he clearly loved little Fan very much. He should have had a better relationship with Fred, shouldn't he? He should have been a better uncle to him. And then we have, this isn't a big thing, but we've got Fezziwig, who treats his apprentices and treats Scrooge like family, doesn't he? And again, we see the warmth of that. So Scrooge has had this, hasn't he? Then another thing we could go on to talk about is Scrooge's redemption. And that is done kind of through family, isn't it? Kind of this is linked with this point here, really. But I'm thinking about the visions of his lonely death. And these are the visions that really get to Scrooge, isn't it? That really make him kind of want to change, is when he sees that death, it scares him. There is an absence of family there, isn't there, at his deathbed? Like I said before, there's no one there to protect him. And this vision, it's this at the end, isn't it? This prompts Scrooge to change, doesn't he? And reconnect with family. It's Fred, isn't it? Okay. And that's kind of like our lasting sort of image, isn't it? Also, that's kind of linked there, isn't it? And I'm also thinking about in that last stave as well. So the lasting image that we're left with is Scrooge's redemption, but it's Fred that he goes back to, isn't it? It's Fred that he reconnects with. And we have the kind of the refusal of the invitation at the very beginning in stage 1. No, I'm not coming for Christmas. 2 at the end, where it's Fred that he goes back to. Okay. And I'm just occurred to me as well that he became a second father to Tiny Tim. Now it occurs to me that Scrooge would have chosen that, not a good friend to, or a supporter, or a mentor. No. He became a second father to Tiny Tim. It's very specific, isn't it? Once again, emphasising the importance of family. And one last thing, we probably wouldn't get to write about all of this. There's quite a lot here. Can't be a good brainstorm. I'm also thinking about the presentation of Belle's family, which is obviously very important too, isn't it? Of Belle's family at the beginning there, and he sees what he could have had if he'd stayed with Belle. He sees the young woman that could have been his daughter, and she has got all of that, hasn't she? And Scrooge hasn't. Scrooge turned his back on that with his worship of a different idol and all of that. Okay, so he turns his back on family, doesn't he? And this is why he has this kind of like very, very sad, horrible life, because he's turned his back on family. That's the message that we're getting from Dickens there, isn't it? Remember the importance of authorial intent. All of this is very deliberately presented to the audience by Dickens, because he's got a message for us, hasn't he? Right, now, so thinking about that message, what I want to do is have a think about a thesis statement and how we could get an essay like this started. Okay. And I do think in your revision it's really worth sort of having a practice at these. They're so powerful. It's such a good way to get an essay started. So let's have a think about this one then. How am I going to get this started? So I'm going to go along these lines. I'm going to go with, in the didactic novel A Christmas Carol, didactic because it's trying to teach us something. Dickens portrays family relationships in order to demonstrate the transformative power of love and connection through Scrooge's journey from isolation and selfishness, because that's how he is at the start, to redemption and joy. This is a long sentence, sorry. Ultimately emphasizing the profound impact that family bonds have on personal growth and happiness. It's a journey, isn't it? A journey that he starts isolated and, well, he's not unhappy because he thinks he's happy, doesn't he? He thinks he's got what he wants. But it's think about the importance of family in that final stage, because that's what he goes back to, and that's what he gets. And I'm thinking with my thesis statement, I'm going to add a bit of context in there as well. I'm going to talk a bit about the Victorian era and family. So I'm going to say during the Victorian era, family represented not only a practical unit for economic and social stability, but also as a source of emotional fulfillment and moral guidance. The ideals of domesticity, that's the domestic, domesticity, duty, Victorians were hot on duty, and respectability, really important values in the Victorian era, were deeply intertwined with the concept of family, making it a central theme in Victorian society and culture. Hugely important. Dickens himself, if we think, we don't need to write about this, but Dickens himself had many children. I can't remember off the top of my head. Well, I think honestly he had about 8 or 9 children. So clearly, you know, the family was very important to him. But the Victorian public, it was hugely important. I remember Queen Victoria was on the throne, and she had a lot of children, and she sort of like presented this incredibly sort of close family unit with her husband, Prince Albert, and all of their children, which was something that the kind of the Victorian public aspired to. So yeah, that's what I've done with my thesis statement there. So yeah, I've talked about what Dickens was up to, but I've tried to link it to the contextual thing, that the contextual point there about how important family was to Victorian culture, and which is exactly what Dickens is reinforcing, the importance of family all the way through the novel. Then what would you do when you've done that? Well, you would do a series of your what and your how and your why paragraphs, depending on what you felt about. You might start with the extract, mightn't you, and in, and then you might go to the novel as a whole, which is your out. Remember what I've said before, you can go in, out, or in, out, it doesn't matter, okay, as long as you write about both of them, which you must do to maximize the number of marks that you're going to get, okay. And then at the end, a conclusion where you just draw your points together. Your conclusion is not as important as this paragraph here. I just think it's really worth practicing them, and really kind of like trying to get some ideas together, getting your head about the different themes, and think, well, how would I start one for family? How would I start one for poverty, etc.? And really having a think. And I think if you know how to do a good thesis statement, and that gets you started, once you get started, the essay just tends to flow really, really nicely, doesn't it? Hey, I hope that's helped you a little bit. I shall do another Macbeth one for you soon, and another Christmas Carol one for you soon, on a couple of subjects that I definitely think that you need to revise, because you know they're topics that could come up. So make sure that you give them a watch. Okay. Thank you very much indeed for listening, and yeah, good luck, guys. Speak to you soon.